They called me heartless before they even knew my name. It spread quickly. Hallway whispers that became cafeteria stories. That became the truth everyone agreed on without asking questions. It didn't matter what I said, or rather, what I didn't say. My silence became their proof. My stillness, my refusal to defend myself, all of it became the crown they placed on my head. The crown of the villain. It was almost elegant, the way the hatred grew. Not in one violent burst, but like mold under paint, spreading quietly, invisibly, until the entire wall was rotten. They painted me as calculating, manipulative, cold. A girl who smiled only when someone else suffered. I let them believe it. I even made sure they did. There is a strange kind of power in being hated. People stop expecting goodness from you. They stop watching for kindness. Stop searching for flaws in your mask, because they already think they found them all. They think they know you, and that is the safest place to hide. Before I begin, I want you to do something for me. If you're here, it means you're ready to hear a truth most people would rather keep buried. So subscribe now, and tell me in the comments, would you keep a secret if it meant everyone else would hate you? I'll be watching your answers. The first time I understood this, I was 17. It was a rainy Thursday, and I remember the exact sound of water hitting the metal roof outside the science building. Someone had slipped a note into my locker. A cruel, cutting thing written in looping letters I recognized instantly. A normal girl might have torn it up, cried in the bathroom, run to a teacher. I folded it neatly, slid it into my bag, and at lunch, I walked straight to the table where they all sat. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam the note down. I just looked at the ringleader, at her perfect hair and her self-satisfied smirk, and said, "Next time, sign your name. It's cowardly to hide." Then I turned and walked away. The silence behind me was delicious. They thought it was arrogance. It wasn't. It was control. I learned that day that if you play the part they've already written for you, they stop digging. And for me, that was survival. Because the truth, the real truth, couldn't survive the light. Over the years, I built the role like an actress perfecting a part. I dressed in dark colors. I smiled rarely, and only in moments that could be mistaken for cruelty. When I spoke, it was with measured precision. Never too much, never too revealing. If there was a kindness in me, it lived behind closed doors where no one could see. People love a villain they can understand, but they fear the one they can't. And I wanted their fear more than I wanted their approval. Fear was distance. And distance kept them from seeing the lines of the secret I was protecting. The odd thing is, once you embrace being despised, people start to offer you more information than they should. They confide in you because they think you have no moral compass, that you're safe because you're already damned. I learned things in whispers in locker rooms, in half-drunk confessions at parties, in moments when people forgot I was listening. Secrets piled up, and I kept them all. But there was one I guarded above everything else. The only one that mattered. It was why I accepted the late-night insults scribbled on my car in lipstick. Why I ignored the fake rumors that I had stolen someone's boyfriend, cheated on a test, sabotaged a college application. Why I let myself be painted as the kind of girl who could do all of that and worse, because the alternative was unthinkable. There were nights I'd sit in my room, the hum of the streetlights seeping through my curtains, and rehearse the story in my head. What would happen if I told the truth? The explosion it would cause, the people it would destroy, the way it would change the life of the one person I couldn't bear to see shattered. And every time, I came to the same conclusion. I would rather burn in their judgment than let that truth touch them. I would rather be the villain in everyone else's book than watch them lose everything. That's the thing no one understands about sacrifice. It doesn't always look noble. Sometimes it looks cruel. Sometimes it looks selfish. Sometimes the person doing it has to become everything they've sworn they're not. So I perfected my role, and the more they hated me, the deeper I buried the real me. But wearing a mask for too long does something strange. It fuses with your skin. You start to forget where the mask ends and you begin, and there are moments when you catch your reflection in a shop window or hear your own voice saying something sharp that you wonder if maybe the lie has become the truth. It's a dangerous game, living in that space between who you are and who they think you are, and it works, until someone starts looking too closely, and someone just did. It didn't happen all at once. The danger crept in quietly, the way water seeps into the cracks of a wall, slow, patient, invisible, until it's too late. It began with a sound, a voice I hadn't heard in years. I was walking through the small grocery store near my apartment, the kind where the aisles are narrow, and the lighting makes everyone look a little tired. I was reaching for a carton of milk when I heard it, his laugh, warm to anyone else's ears, but to me it was a siren, a warning. I froze. My fingers tightened around the carton until the plastic bent inward. I knew that laugh. I knew it in my bones. The way you know the smell of your childhood home or the rhythm of your own heartbeat. It belonged to the one person I had been protecting all these years. The one person I had allowed myself to love without condition. And if he was here, then the danger wasn't far behind. He didn't see me at first. He was at the end of the aisle, talking to someone, smiling, relaxed, unknowing. And for a brief second, I envied him. He still moved through the world without flinching at shadows. He didn't realize how close the past was to catching him. I left the store without saying a word. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what I knew. The secret I had been guarding for over a decade wasn't just mine. It was his too. And if the wrong person found out, it wouldn't just destroy him, it would destroy everything connected to him. I remembered the night it all began. We were younger. He was 17. I was 18. It was one of those heavy summer nights where the air feels thick, where the cicadas sing loud enough to drown out your thoughts. We were at a party neither of us wanted to be at, but we stayed because leaving would have looked suspicious. He was nervous that night, quieter than usual. I didn't know why until I saw him slip away toward the back of the house. Curiosity made me follow. The hallway was dark, the only light spilling in from a bathroom door slightly ajar. And there, through the gap, I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. I saw him, my closest friend, standing over someone on the floor. The other boy's face was pale, slack, like all the air had been pulled out of him, and in that frozen moment, I knew something irreversible had happened. It wasn't murder, not exactly, but it was something close enough to ruin his life if anyone found out. Something messy, something that wouldn't fit neatly into a court's definition of guilt or innocence. A fight that went too far, a fall that landed wrong, a chain of seconds that could never be undone. He looked at me then, his eyes wide, terrified, pleading, and without thinking, I stepped into the room, shut the door, and locked it. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. We made a pact that night. I would take the blame for what came next. Not openly, but in all the ways that mattered. I would distract, I would mislead, I would let suspicion settle on me like dust until people stopped looking at him, until his name was clean again. And it worked. But the cost was steep. I became the girl everyone distrusted, the one parents whispered about when their kids passed me in the hallway. The one who probably had something to do with it, but could never be proven guilty. It became easier for people to believe I was capable of anything cruel, and I let them. Years passed. He built a life, college, a job, a family, and I stayed in the shadows, still wearing the mask, still catching any whisper that might lead back to him and cutting it off before it could grow. I didn't do it for gratitude. I didn't do it for love. I did it because the truth would destroy him, and I couldn't live with that. But lately, things were changing. In the weeks after I saw him at the store, I started noticing signs. A car idling too long outside my building. A strange number calling my phone twice a day without leaving a message. An envelope slipped under my door, empty except for a single Polaroid photo. It was the photo that made my blood run cold. It showed the hallway from that night. The light spilling from the bathroom door, and two shadows on the floor, mine and his. Someone knew, and if they knew, it was only a matter of time before they decided to use it. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail of the past. How carefully I had hidden everything, how many lies I had told, how much of myself I had let die so he could live freely. And yet here it was, the past, scratching at the door, waiting to be let in. There is a particular kind of fear that comes from realizing your sacrifice might have been for nothing, that all the years of being hated, all the friendships you let rot, all the parts of yourself you locked away, might not save the person you were trying to protect after all. And in that moment, I realized something I had never allowed myself to think before. If it came down to saving him again, or saving myself, I didn't know which choice I would make this time. It started with the feeling of being watched, not the paranoid kind that comes from too much coffee and too little sleep. This was different. This was deliberate, measured, like someone was studying me the way a predator studies the edges of a field before stepping into the open. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. The man on the corner in the same dark jacket 3 mornings in a row. The unfamiliar car parked across from my building with fogged windows in the middle of summer. The faint click of a camera shutter when I left my apartment after dusk. They could all be coincidences, but deep down, I knew better. Then came the second envelope. No name, no return address. Inside, another Polaroid. This one was sharper, clearer. It showed him, sitting outside a cafe with his wife and daughter. The angle made it obvious the photographer was close enough to hear the clink of cutlery on their plates. Across the photo, in thick black marker, someone had written, "How much is he worth to you now?" The words burned through me. It wasn't a question, it was a statement, an ultimatum. I burned the photo in my sink, watching the flames curl the edges inward until they blackened and collapsed. But I couldn't burn the weight of it from my mind. The game had shifted. This wasn't about random suspicion anymore. Whoever was behind this knew exactly what had happened that night. And they knew exactly how to use it. I didn't tell him. I couldn't. He'd look at me with those same wide, terrified eyes I saw in that bathroom years ago, and I wasn't ready to see the panic return. So I did what I'd always done. I took it on myself, but I knew I couldn't just wait for the next photo to arrive. I had to move. I started retracing the past like it was a crime scene, visiting old places, pulling at loose threads in conversations that had happened years ago. People don't remember every detail, but they remember feelings. And feelings can open doors, facts cannot. The first person I visited was a man named Ryan. Back then, he was the kind of boy who saw everything but spoke in riddles. He'd been at the party the night it happened. When I found him, he was working at a tire shop on the edge of town, his hands permanently stained with grease. He didn't look surprised to see me. He didn't even smile. "I knew you'd come eventually," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. Something in my stomach tightened. "You've heard from someone?" I said, more as a statement than a question. He shrugged, but his eyes flickered, just for a second. "A guy came by a couple months ago, asked questions about that summer. I told him I didn't remember much." "And do you?" He hesitated. "I remember enough to know you didn't do what they said you did, but I also remember enough to know he didn't either. Not exactly." It was the first time in years anyone had hinted at the gray truth of that night. The truth no one ever dared to say aloud. Ryan leaned in, lowering his voice. The guy who came around, he wasn't local, had an accent, said he was writing a book about unsolved stories. But his questions were too sharp. He wanted details only someone who'd been there would care about. And when I didn't give him what he wanted, he smiled like he already knew everything anyway. That smile followed me home. I began to see a pattern. Whoever was behind this wasn't just fishing for information, they were confirming it, building something, and if they were this careful, they wouldn't stop until they had the story they wanted, which meant I needed to know what kind of ending they were planning to write for us. The next Polaroid came 3 days later. This time, it was me in the frame, standing at the bus stop looking down at my phone. In the corner of the image, almost hidden, was the reflection of a man in a store window. His face was obscured by the brim of a hat, but the angle of his shoulders, the stillness of his posture, it was deliberate. He wanted me to see him without seeing him. On the back of the photo was a single sentence: "Villains don't get happy endings." I laughed when I read it, a dry, humorless sound, not because it wasn't true, but because I had already accepted that a long time ago. I had built my life on that truth, but they didn't know the rest. They didn't know that I had been preparing for this moment for years, that every cruel thing people believed about me had given me room to move in shadows, to keep secrets, to play a role so convincingly that even I sometimes forgot where the mask ended. And if they wanted to play a game, I would show them what it meant to be the villain they thought they were chasing. But to do that, I needed to know exactly what they were willing to destroy to get what they wanted, so I set the trap. It started with a phone call I didn't intend to answer. Unknown number, no voicemail, just the kind of persistent ringing that makes your stomach clench for reasons you can't name. I was sitting at my kitchen table, the latest Polaroid still face down in front of me, when the screen lit up again. Against my better judgment, I picked it up. A voice I didn't recognize filled the line. Male, calm, too calm. "You've been hard to find," he said. I didn't respond. "I like that," he continued, as though we were discussing something polite. "It makes the hunt more interesting. But you should know, games only last as long as both players are willing to play." I could hear faint traffic in the background, the low rumble of passing cars. He was outside, moving. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. There was a pause, like he was savoring the question. I want the truth, the kind you've been holding on to for more than a decade, and I want it before someone else gets hurt. Something in the way he said it, soft, almost regretful, made my chest tighten. He wasn't bluffing. He knew enough to be dangerous. I ended the call without another word, but my hands were trembling. That night, I went through the old box I kept buried in the back of my closet. Inside were the last remnants of the girl I used to be. Letters, ticket stubs, a photograph of him and me from before that summer changed everything. At the very bottom was the shirt I wore the night it happened. I had washed it 3 times, but the faint shadow of the stain was still there. A ghost that never fully disappeared. I thought I had buried that night, but now it felt like it was clawing its way back up through the dirt, desperate to be seen. If this man wanted to play, I would give him something to chase. Something just close enough to the truth to pull him in, and far enough to keep him from seeing the whole picture. I started small. I visited the old neighborhood where the party had been. The house was still there, though someone new lived in it now. Fresh paint, a different fence, no trace of what had happened in the upstairs bathroom, but memories have a way of bleeding through walls. Standing in that hallway again, I could almost hear the muffled music, the laughter, the moment the world tipped. I took photos of the house, of the street, of the alley behind it. I left one of those photos in an unmarked envelope at the front desk of a hotel downtown, one I knew had security cameras. I wanted him to see me leave it. I wanted him to follow. It worked. The next day, another Polaroid arrived. This one was of me at the hotel lobby, sliding the envelope across the desk. On the back, he had written, "Closer." The game was moving faster now. Each step felt like walking along the edge of a blade. I didn't know how much time I had before he pushed too far, before he found the cracks in my story and slipped through them. But here's the thing about being hated for so long. It teaches you to thrive in the role. People believe anything about you if it fits the narrative they've already built. And this stranger was no different. He thought he was hunting a villain. I would let him believe that. Meanwhile, I dug deeper into him. A contact I still had from years ago, a woman who owed me more than one favor, ran his phone number. What came back was interesting. He wasn't a journalist, despite what he told Ryan. He had no publishing history, no trace of academic work, but he had been in the city before, 15 years ago, around the time everything happened, which meant this wasn't random. This wasn't just about curiosity. The more I learned, the more dangerous he became, because I realized he wasn't just chasing my secret, he was connected to it. Somehow, some way, he had been orbiting that night long before I ever knew his name. And if that was true, then maybe he already knew the truth. Maybe this entire game wasn't about finding it. Maybe it was about forcing me to say it out loud. The next call came 2 days later. No greeting this time, just his voice, quiet and certain. You can't carry it forever. I let the silence stretch until it became something sharp between us. "Watch me," I said, but when I hung up, my pulse was unsteady because for the first time since this began, I wasn't entirely sure I could. And that was when I understood something terrifying. The real danger wasn't him exposing me. It was what might happen if I finally wanted him to. It's strange how quickly fear can turn into temptation. For weeks, I had been moving like someone in a burning house. Every step calculated, every breath measured, always searching for the safest exit. But now, there was a shift. The fear was still there, sharp and ready to sink its teeth in. Yet underneath it, something darker began to stir. What would happen if I stopped running? What if I just told him? That thought was dangerous, addictive. It whispered to me in the quiet hours when the city outside had gone still, when I lay awake with only the ticking of the clock for company, the idea that all the years of silence, the mask I had worn, the weight I had carried, could all end with a single conversation. Of course, it wouldn't just end for me. He would lose everything, his career, his family, the fragile peace he had built on a foundation of my lies. And maybe that was why I hadn't done it yet. Not because I was afraid of my own ruin, but because I had spent so long protecting his. Then came the package. No envelope this time. A small, nondescript box left at my door. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a single object. A hairpin, silver, delicate, with a small crack along its edge. I knew it immediately. It had been on the bathroom floor that night, lying a few inches from the boy's head. I remembered it catching the light as I stepped inside, my heart pounding. I had forgotten it existed, but someone hadn't. Beneath the hairpin was a note in the same blocky handwriting from the Polaroids. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd stayed quiet? I laughed. Short, humorless. I had stayed quiet. That was the point. That was the whole reason my life had become what it was. But the note wasn't about that. It was bait. A reminder that the past was no longer mine to control. I didn't throw it away this time. I kept it on the table in plain sight, like a warning I could touch. That night, I dreamed of the bathroom again. The sound of the faucet dripping, the sharp smell of bleach, the boy's uneven breathing, shallow and panicked, my friend's voice breaking as he said my name like it was both a question and a plea. In the dream, I didn't move. I didn't help. I just watched. And when I woke, my hands were gripping the sheet so tightly my nails had left half moons in the fabric. The next day, I decided to stop waiting for him to make the next move. I went to the cafe where I knew he, my friend, the one I had protected, liked to spend his mornings. He was there, as I expected, reading the paper like nothing in the world could touch him. I didn't sit down. I didn't smile. I just stood beside his table until he looked up. "We need to talk," I said. He blinked, startled. "About what?" "You know what," I replied, my voice low enough that only he could hear. Something flickered in his eyes then. Not guilt, fear. He set the paper down slowly. "Has someone contacted you?" I didn't answer. I wanted him to feel the weight of the question, the way I had felt it for weeks. "I thought it was over," he said finally, his voice cracking in a way that made him seem younger, smaller. "It's never over," I said. "You should know that better than anyone." For a moment, I thought he might confess everything right there, that maybe he was as tired of running as I was, but instead he shook his head and reached for his coffee. "We can't talk here." We agreed to meet that night, somewhere quiet, but as I walked away, I saw it through the glass window of the cafe across the street, a man in a dark jacket standing too still, watching. It wasn't just me he was following anymore. The meeting didn't happen. He canceled an hour before, claiming something had come up, but I knew the truth. He was scared, and fear makes people unpredictable. It makes them dangerous. I was left alone in my apartment with the hairpin still sitting on the table, the unanswered questions piling higher in my mind. How much did this man know? How much had my friend told him? And more unsettling, why did I feel like the stranger's presence was beginning to matter to me in ways I couldn't explain? Because deep down, beneath the fear and the anger, there was a part of me that wanted him to be the one to finally pull the truth out of me, to take the choice away. And I think he knew that, which is why the next thing he sent wasn't a photo, it wasn't a note. It was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly with an address written on it, the address of the house where it all began.